Hi, I'm Jenna and Roberts with Present Path Tarot, and this is my friend Zoe Campbell. And she's just getting into tarot. We're roommates, so we've been having a lot of fun. And she is someone who I lived with before, and she's very science minded, and I never expected her to become really excited about the tarot, and so I'm thrilled. And what happened was she met this deck, and this deck like transformed her perspective of why she's excited about it. So, what inspired you that you like love this deck?
Yeah, so you had introduced me to tarot, and so I knew about it. And as you said, definitely full-blown science-minded. I have a PhD. I'm a researcher by profession. So I usually thought of tarot as being like a fun way for us to interact, and I knew that you did it, but I didn't really think that I would want to read it myself, or I don't know, it was just like a fun thing that I did with Jenna. And then I have another friend who's also a researcher who has played around with tarot because her dad gave her a deck a long time ago, and so I bought her, at Jenna's recommendation, I bought her this deck as a present. And mainly I also picked it too. I was like, oh, it has an animal in it, and her toddler right now is really into animals, so I thought, okay, it fits the two of them. Tarot for her, an animal picture for her son. And then I started looking at it, and it's beautiful. Should I show
Yeah,
some of
sure,
these?
yeah.
Okay, so there were two cards. First, they were just visually really beautiful, and I was like, these are amazing. So this one is the Queen of Pentacles. So it's this female moose, swimming in the water. And I was like, oh, that is cool. I have seen moose swimming around in water. She's really fitting well in her environment, and she's got everything mastered. And Jenna was like, yeah, that's what that card is about. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Okay, whatever. And here's another one also, just again, really visually beautiful. So this is another queen card, the Queen of Pentacles. And so my friend pulled this, and I was like, oh, like a pig in mud, you're really, again, comfortable in your environment, and you are not overthinking things too much. Maybe you're just like really blissed out and joyful and in simple pleasures. And Jen's like, that's what that card is about a little bit. So I thought, okay, this is a little bit fun. Tell me more. And so that's how it happened. Basically, this idea that I don't have to know a lot about the rules of tarot, and Jenna is teaching me, but this idea that if I look at the picture and think about, okay, what are these animals like in their environment, and again, work related to, I used to be a wildlife biologist, so I've gotten to see a lot of these different animals and insects and reptiles.
And she's lived in East Africa for many years now.
Yeah, so I've gotten to see some other, not just North American animals in their natural environment, which is super cool. So I think about, okay, what were these animals doing in their environment? What are their stories? What are their personal histories? What do they eat? How do they interact with other animals? What are their mating rituals like? And then I kind of read the cards that way, and it usually works okay.
It works out really well.
Okay, so
she's teaching me about the cards now because I'm like, oh my God, that perspective really adds a layer to my understanding of that card. Mm-hmm. So Lisa Robertson, Animal Totem Tarot, she's killing it. Mm-hmm. One thing I'd like to say that I really like is that a lot of decks will, you'll have air is birds, and if there's animals involved, they'll just associate, okay, air is birds, and water are ocean animals, and fire are desert animals, and earth are forest, maybe farm animals. But it's always very limited to like that group of animals in that suit. And what I love about this deck is how yes, there's birds in wands or in swords, but there's also birds in wands. Like she's attaching the true nature of that animal's behavior to the meaning of the card. So there's a lot more depth, I think, when you do it that way, and you have to really know animals. And so the other thing about this is the perfect deck for Zoe because she really knows animals much better than most people, honestly. And then I do not. So this is not the deck for me, even though I love this deck. I'm having a blast looking at it with her. It's beautiful. And I also really love that Lisa Robertson has put it from the perspective of the animal. So this, warrior card is not about the human perspective of the skunk, but about the animal perspective of being a skunk.
Yeah, it looks like the skunk has gotten into the garden and has eaten some things. So it's not really about, how would you as a human get rid of pesky skunks. But if you read, and the book is really well written too, so she has nice little explanations about which things she's talking about for the different animal traits. But for the Seven of Wands, you get it, and it looks like the skunk is being hunted by these wands, maybe for having eaten things in the garden. But it's from the skunk's perspective. So this idea that you are an animal that has this amazing defensive power, right? You've got musk glands and you can basically create a horrible smell, but it's not about that. It's this idea that you're defending your territory, and that's not really the main thing that you want to be doing. You're not an aggressive animal. Skunks are not particularly aggressive,
yeah.
but they can be when you get them into a corner. So this idea about defending your own territory and
Especially
having
when necessary.
When necessary, exactly, with the emphasis on when necessary. Like,
yeah.
Horrible vermin. She doesn't portray the animals in that way. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, like I would say, like we haven't gotten into reversals yet, but the skunk card reversed would then be like, you know, spraying your musk when it's not time yet. When it's like, well, that wasn't actually attacking you, and now you've just stunk up the world a bit. You know.
Another note to beginners: I have been carefully, in a really specific way, not shuffling my cards, so nothing ever gets reversed. I don't know how to do that, but maybe that's like level 10.
And I've had friends do that too. You can choose to shuffle your deck, where you just look at it and then shuffle it so that it lands face up every time. But you also can just shuffle. I always just shuffled how I wanted, and when I wasn't comfortable with reversals at first, I would just place them upright. And then as I got more comfortable with reversals, I would just let them land how they landed. Like, oh, I know that reversal, I'll work with it that way. So the other thing I like about this deck is it just gives me extra perspective sometimes on cards. Like the Four of Pentacles is often sort of taken in a negative way, like you're greedy and you're hoarding. And at the same time, it's about saving resources. That's what you're doing in the Four of Pentacles. It's a very stabilizing of your resources kind of card with the Four and the Pentacles, Earth. And I love that there's a tree growing out of one of the seeds that squirrels plant. And so I know, this is my exciting animal knowledge, squirrels create a huge amount of trees because they just forget where they plant their seeds. So they go around planting all these seeds, and then we get trees out of that, but they were meant to just being buried for their own food. So this idea that some good things can come if you let some of your resources also go into the earth and forget about them, and then that will, you know, like, so there's kind of a letting go and a hoarding kind of balance in this card that I really like a lot. Yeah. So, and then, but Zoe has been teaching me so much about animals.
All the nature shows I watched as a little kid are paying off.
Totally right. PBS, thank you. So we want to talk about this one first?
Sure. Yeah, we can.
Okay, so Four of Wands. And what kind of bird is this?
So this is a bowerbird. There are a whole bunch of birds that make these rounded woven nests, and this is one of them. So you can see this is a male. He's like in the middle of courtship, right? He's trying to make this nest. And so the weaver birds will often attract females by building a nice nest. So the males want to build a nice nest, and the females are like, checking you out. How are you? Also, how's your nest? Is my egg going to fall out, crash to the ground? Do you know what you're doing? And so Jenna's laughing at me. I don't know. My interpretation of this card, we pulled it for a friend, and I thought, okay, so the bowerbird is, he's started building the nest, but he's not done, right? This nest isn't done. And he's also, the author pointed out to us that he's got a whole bunch of other little shiny treasures that he's brought to maybe help attract a mate too. He's found some little sparkly things and he's laid them out, right? Little trinkets for his mate to be. But he's not done, and so I kind of laughed at this and I was like, oh, it's like he wants a lot of attention. He's like, look at me, I need some praise. I built half a nest and I found some shiny thing. So there's the wand energy of having intentions, but also maybe, and you do have some focus on one thing, but you're also maybe not done yet, and you want a little bit of credit for it, right? Even though you're not done.
And that's great because this card is about accolades and also the courtship aspect of it, because it's about it can be about engagement or having like an event of some kind to get accolades for a union and so it's about courting, and so there's lots of little neat details that relate to the traditional meaning of the card. And then I feel like it's another level that's created of meaning, and I believe that you can also bring to any reading, if you know something about that animal or you had an experience with that animal, I believe that you can bring that to it, even if that's not necessarily the traditional meaning of the card, because I think our personal life experiences are incredibly relevant to being tarot readers, and how you read that card might be different from someone else, and that's okay. There's no perfectionism in this industry. It's not like that. So yeah, pick another card. I love your interpretations.
Should we try this one?
Yeah.
This one's a hard one.
Well, I think I just love how this helped me deepen my understanding of the Tower card. It's a termite mound.
Yeah, so this is one of the major arcana cards. I find them to be a little bit trickier sometimes because they seem like they have bigger meanings. But my thought about the termite mound, and reading a little bit, I've seen them when I've been working in Tanzania, is that there's this community of insects, right? And they're very cooperative, and they build these above ground structures that we can see, termite mounds, right? But there's also this entire most of the termite mound is still underground, right? Most of the tunnels and the community and the termites themselves are still under the ground. So this idea that, I don't know, you're going to have to flesh this out, but this idea that the termite mound is the very external part that you can see, kind of an ego-related part, and it can be destroyed. It can get knocked down, right? So you can see there's really dramatic weather happening. There's lightning. Rain could also probably, although termite mounds are pretty tough, a big storm could knock down a termite mound. But this idea that there's still all of this undercurrent of things happening outside, underneath the ground, and that the termite mound will get rebuilt despite.
So yeah, I love that, and that's like
But what does it mean?
That is the Tower card. The Tower card is this thing where like, it's the battle that's going to keep coming at you throughout your life, right? Mm-hmm. So the challenge that you face through your ego challenges, sometimes through your karmic life lessons, but often through ego challenges that you have to go through again and again and again. And so I love that this card is that termite. Even if the tower falls, another tower is going to rise up behind it.
It's like they have to rebuild. I don't know why they have to rebuild. Why can't they just live underground? Maybe we need an entomologist.
Yeah. Entomologist would be into this deck.
Yeah. Speaking of, for the insect lovers out there, this is also a very beautiful card in the Major Arcana. So this is the Hanged Man, or as portrayed in this deck, the honeypot ant. So I had to read a little bit about honeypot ants. So honeypot ants are, like a lot of insect communities, like bees and ants, they have these really complicated social structures and very clear roles and hierarchies about who does what. So some honeypot ants, they live in, I have to check where they live. I don't know. They live in a desert area where basically resources are available some of the time, but not the rest of the year. So what they'll do is they'll basically use the bodies of some ants as like a storage for resources. So a honeypot ant, if she is selected, will be fed by all the workers when there are a lot of resources outside, and then basically in the tough time of year, she'll support the rest of the colony by regurgitating nectar. So this is her role. Like, she's been chosen. Maybe males do it too, but usually in these, I'll think about bees. Usually females do these sorts of things. So the female ant, we'll assume, is regurgitating nectar. This is her role. She'll do it all of her life. And this idea about the Hanged Man is that you're in a scenario that's a little bit unusual. Like, she's in a reversed position, you know, her head is like up on the ceiling, that's where she's hanging. And this idea that you could surrender to your state, right? This is what she's going to do. If she fights it mentally, you know, she's going to have a lot of trouble. If she comes at it with some Buddhist perspective, like, this is my role for my community, I will surrender to this is how it's going to be, then her life is really beautiful, right? She's supporting an entire colony. So
I love that. No, that's the perfect hangman interpretation. Yeah. I love that so much. Yeah. It's spot on. I mean, that's it. You have to surrender to sacrifice yourself to the greater good in some way, and you're in a situation usually that's a little upside down. Yeah. Yeah. She is. COVID has been a lot about that, you know, that we all have to kind of sacrifice in our own little ways. And
yeah, and sort of rethinking mentally how you're going to handle that sacrifice.
Yeah. Awesome. Love that one. And she came home from giving this deck to her friend, and she was like, the honeypot ant, I need that deck. And it was this card in a big way that, like, I think got her hooked. Yeah. And the neat thing is she knows about animals, but then she gets to learn more. So there's like and at the same time as you're learning about animals, you're learning about the tarot. Mm-hmm. It's all like this neat interweaving. And one thing I like that you said was about being a researcher. This feels the same.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess, you know, in research, and you can talk about sort of the origins of tarot, but as I've been giving readings for friends, I basically say, like, okay, I can't read the future. That's not what this is about. I'm not a witch. That's not what this is about. But this idea is, like, this is a tool to basically just think about your life or someone else's life or current events in a different way. And basically, I don't know, what my brain likes is to look at data and find patterns and then make a story of it. So basically, you're using things you already know about your own life or someone else's life, but these are just tools to make you think about it in a slightly different way maybe than you normally would, and helps you kind of put together a narrative for it, which just feels really good. It's really fun. And especially, yeah, as Jenna said, I wouldn't be getting into it if it weren't for this deck. I wouldn't be researching, I don't know, what is Eight of Swords? I would have forgotten. So here's another one. I didn't even know it was Eight of Swords. I was like, Jenna, what's that mole card about? And she was like, oh yeah, Eight of Swords. So here is another card. We'll do a couple more. I guess we're all kind of tell an animal story and Jenna can tell what it actually means. So Eight of Swords, more unusual animals. So this is a mole, and they live underground. You know, you can see they've got these big digging claws. I actually saw one once in real life. I was so excited. And it was after a storm, just like in this picture. So it's really pretty stormy. It had rained where I was living in southern Tanzania. And I saw walking across the road this tiny mole, and I've always wanted to see one. I've seen them dead, like when cats or, something gets them and kills them and digs them out of the ground. But I've never seen a live one because they live underground. You can't see them. And I see it walking across the road. It's just the sun has come out. It's still a little cloudy. And across the road, he goes. Beautiful fur, this glossy, thick fur, for living underground and not getting wet, I guess. So I thought, okay, what's this card about? I read a little. So sword cards are about sort of mental things. And obviously this looks a little dark. It's a little challenging. The mole is looking like he's in a tough spot. So the idea about this card is that you might sometimes be encouraged to change your mental thought processes about something that's happening to you. So the mental framework that you were using in the past, like the mole living underground, perfectly adapted to, be digging burrows and really be living underground. They can't see very well. They're not like above ground creatures. The tools and the mental framework that you had set up for your previous environment is not working anymore, right? It's rained. You've gotten rained out. Your burrows are underwater. You're coming out to look maybe for another thing to be doing. And when you do that, the mental framework that you had before, swords, these mental things, is maybe not working, and you need to try something new, even though what you were doing was working before, and it might work again, but you just need to shift your mental perspective a little bit.
Yeah, and that's definitely part of the Eight of Swords, and the Eight of Swords also has that aspect of being kind of like feeling trapped in some way, but you're not really trapped. Like you're mentally trapped, but you're not really trapped, and so this mole is flooded out, he's kind of trapped, but he can move to another spot, and then re-dig in a new hole and create a new situation, but he has to change his mentality in some way to shift, or he can just sit in his puddle in the dirt and be unhappy. So
I don't know.
There's like a choice in there of like shifting your mentality, like you were saying.
Yeah. I'm guessing about my mole. I guess he got rained out, but I don't know why else he decided to like take a walk across the road.
I feel like that's a
weird thing to
that
do.
Storm is saying he got rained out, I think. So
maybe.
Yeah, so, but also I just feel like your experience with the mole is as relevant as what the traditional meaning of the card is, because that's a great advice to give someone in a reading, and if that comes in, then that's relevant to the reading, I'm sure. Yeah, we got 2 more cards we're going to talk about, and then we're going to do a little reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bird or insect?
Bird. Well, actually, I don't know. I'll go with it.
Birds. More birds. There are more traditional animals here. The deck does have, lions and flamingos, but we like to pick the weird ones, just especially for all of you. So this is the Woodpecker card.
3 of Wands.
See, I don't remember by the name, the tarot name. I don't remember. So this is a Woodpecker card. I looked it up. I was trying to figure out for the science geeks. It looks sort of like a pileated woodpecker. They live in North America, but the colors are a little different on the head. So I feel like the author might be from the UK, maybe. And sometimes she has like some European birds that are slightly different. But anyway, woodpecker family. And the idea about this, so if we look at our woodpecker here, he's, perched on this wand like he's about to, peck a hole in it and try to look for some insects. But the idea about this one, as I read the book, was that wands are an action card, and you're in a moment where you're kind of early in maybe decision making, and it's a good time to just take a little pause and kind of look around in the environment and see what's happening. So this idea that it's kind of on a big overlook and he's looking over the lake and maybe seeing boats. Jenna mentioned that there's something about travel. But more than that,
it's a reference to the original card of Rider-Waite-Smith.
Okay.
The boats.
I knew nothing about that. And I was like, oh, look, there are 3 wands. It's kind of like 3 trees. And the main message that I got from this card was the idea that you might be starting something a little bit new. So the wands for the movement, and you have maybe more opportunities than you are considering at the current time. So our woodpecker is on one wand tree, but there are 2 others that he's not even really looking at. So this idea that you don't need to just be single-mindedly focused on one opportunity, to sort of take a pause, take a step back, look around, assess what's going on, and realize you might actually have multiple opportunities. And maybe being single-mindedly focused on one, that might be okay, but just knowing that you have others, or also knowing, okay, maybe you missed an opportunity. Maybe this tree isn't the best. There are 2 others behind you.
And also the 3 of Wands to me is about open, like you have opportunity and you're focusing on one, and that's good, but knowing that there's others so that you don't panic or whatever. Like that, yeah, I love that interpretation of that. I love that interpretation. I'm learning about the cards. I love it. I mean,
she checks me. She keeps me on track.
Tarot is a never-ending journey of learning. It's so great. And then the last card we're going to talk about before we give a little reading, which we'll still talk about cards in, of course.
So, short and sweet.
Pull it that way a little bit.
Yeah. I could think there. The Ace of Pentacles is represented by a dung beetle. Is it the ace?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ace of Pentacles represented by a dung beetle. So kind of new beginnings, but also as the dung beetle pushes around dung and kind of reuses resources that maybe have been overlooked, you can do that same thing too. So again, a little bit like Three of Wands, actually, looking around at resources that you have and realizing, okay, maybe you have more to work with than you thought. And maybe you can make something really beautiful. So if anyone's actually seen a dung beetle's dung ball, I kept telling Jenna, I was like, shiny balls, they're so beautiful. It gets really glossy. I don't know what they do, but they lay their eggs inside of the dung ball and then roll it, and it gets really, really smooth and glossy. It looks like a Whopper candy. They're really gorgeous. So this idea that you can make a beautiful thing, like new offspring, you're literally like making more dung beetles by repurposing resources that are often overlooked is pretty cool.
Repurpose and poop.
Yeah, to make a shiny dung ball.
Cool. And then we want to offer a reading and show you also how I'm kind of, teaching.
How you're teaching me what to do.
Oh, yeah. And so she's going to give a reading, and I'm going to just shut the heck up while she does. And then, let me get the light out of the way. It was working before. Okay, I'm going to go like that. We're going to hold it like that. I'm just going to hold it.
That's all I like.
And Zoe's going to explain these 3 cards, and then I'll add my addition, but I think in this case it's mostly on you. You did a great job really explaining these. So.
I'll try.
I love your take on the magician, so.
Yeah, so we pulled these cards on just kind of how are things happening right now. You can interpret that however you like. And we pulled these 3. So the first card, which the other funny thing is I don't know all the cards yet. I've just been pulling the ones I pull, and I keep pulling the same cards over and over again. One of them has been the magician. It's magic. Also the card featured on the front of the box. So a fox hunting in the snow. And the idea behind the magician card, as you can see in sort of the symbols, those also give a good hint, right? All of the symbols of the different, are they called suits?
Elements?
Elements?
Mm-hmm.
The
suits, yeah. The elements, yeah.
So all the elements from the other minor arcana are featured here. So this idea that a fox is somewhat has some sort of spiritual or mystical powers as a magician would, and has command of a lot of different elements, basically. So the fox here has all the elements to work with as she's hunting. And the idea about the magician card being that we can go on kind of a journey with all of the things, but only if we're very in tune to what's happening. So there's some research that I found out about. There's a Czech researcher, and he realized that when foxes are hunting, their success rate is a lot higher if they're facing north or northeast than if they're facing any other direction when they're jumping through the snow to kind of break through the crust and get to rodents that are underneath the snow in the winter. So they're much more successful when they're facing north or northeast. And he was like, that's weird. And so basically the current theory is that foxes can use the electromagnetic field, which birds also use to migrate, in order to hunt better, basically to locate their prey under the snow when they can only hear and they can't see, to do that better. So again, this idea that we have the skills that we need, but we need to tap into this kind of, mystical, mysterious undercurrent, right? To tap into spiritual resources that we have as a global community to deal with things, or maybe to tap into other deeper knowledge that is not very superficial and we don't always pay attention to. And if we do that, we have all the things that we need to be successful. So that's the magician.
Yeah, and also how it has to listen, you were saying. Like, it has to listen under the snow. It has to, really tune in to the tiny sounds of little mice under, feet of snow, and then do this crazy dive. She made me watch a video of doing the dive. Yeah. She's like, put on Fox videos now! So.
Yep. Yeah, and also, what would it be like to tap into an electromagnetic field, right? We don't really know how to do that as humans. Is it a sound? Is it a feeling? Right there, some sort of...
Yeah, but magicians do.
Magicians know how. Foxes know how. So that's the idea. So tap into something a little deeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second card is a mountain goat. So living in the Rocky Mountains. We got a North American animal. Yay. Living in the Rocky Mountains. And as the author described, so picture this mountain goat as being really young, like an adolescent mountain goat, still kind of figuring out how to navigate really, really tough terrain. Places where mountain goats go, you can't walk. A horse can't walk. A mule can't walk. They're really tough environments. So again, mountain goats have the skills and they're well adapted, but they're still kind of learning. So this idea that through repetition and work, you can gain mastery and you can do really great things, but you really have to put in the work. So again, if we go back to the magician, it's not that the magician learned how to do these things overnight, right? You don't learn the skills to be really successful and tap into the, magnetic fields overnight, but you learn them through repetition and through practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pentacle lineup kind of going up the mountainside is really, really well laid out. There's a clear path. There's a clear path of work to do. So kind of a work to gain mastery card, and repetition, sort of emphasizing, the boring and tedious parts of really getting things done.
Mm-hmm. And then the Ace of Wands.
Oh yeah, Ace of Wands is a firefly. So wands are about, again, movement and energy. Ace is kind of beginning things. I don't know. You can tell about the tarot part.
I mean,
tell about
I
the
think
animal
that
part.
I think that keeping your spark alive while you do the hard practice. So you have the magician who's like a master, and then the master got that through hard work, continual persistence, and keeping that spark alive of enthusiasm for something.
Enthusiasm. We talked about communication too for fireflies. So fireflies basically they emit that little light during mating season and also to communicate. So they're lighting up to attract mates. But then also we were talking about sort of the reading the light of the card or the season of the card, or it's dusk. So this idea that when you have something important that you're trying to communicate to other people or within your community, that those communications only can be received if you're in the right environment. So if the firefly is looking for a mate in the middle of the afternoon at 2 p.m. when the sun is shining, those communications won't be picked up. They're just simply not visible. So this idea about paying attention to your environment and being really in the right time and place so that certain communications can be read. And maybe they're communications that people have been trying to put out for a really long time, but because of the environment, we haven't been able to pick them up. So I think
that's I love that.
Delve into political events too much, but it seems relevant there.
Yeah, so this reading is one for everyone that we hope you can gain from this week, and I hope that you are mastering something, working hard at it, and keeping inspired, and putting out your message at the right time of day, or the right, or night, and in the right way that can be heard. So I think that's a great message for all of us right now. Get your message heard that way. So yeah, I mean, basically, Zoe will give me her interpretation of these animals, and then I'll tell her about the traditional meaning of the card, and then we talk about how the cards relate to each other in the reading, and usually I learn from it and she learns from it as well. And then so yeah, and we also, when you first get a deck, you want to lay out all the cards and then look at how the ones look, the twos look, the threes look. So we did that, and it got her thinking about numbers more in relationship to the meanings of the elements. And so it's just a fun journey to help a friend who I adore begin on, because I love reading so much. And
now I'm reading too.
And now she loves reading too. Yay!
She got me.
She'll be saying she's a witch next year. So, what is witchiness anyway, really? That's another episode of Present Path Tarot. So thank you for listening today, and please subscribe to my page, watch another video, and come join me at presentpathtarot.com. Come get a reading from me, and if you'd like Zoe's input, I'm sure she'd be happy to help out. She'll be staying with me in Portland, Oregon for the next month or so. So yeah, take care, and thanks for listening.
Bye.